Paul Ricard is a very fast and very demanding circuit, and one thing you're going to have to really keep an eye on here is track limits. It's very easy to run too wide off the track, and you can only do that so many times before you get a penalty. So the drivers in our series, different series do it differently, but for us it's 3 warnings, and then on the 4th strike you get a penalty, which is a drive-through penalty by default. We can change it, but generally it's a drive-through penalty, which of course can be race ending. So that's going to be very easy to do, particularly in longer races. So it's really important that the drivers don't make too many mistakes and run wide. It's not so bad if you run wide and don't gain time, but the game will know if you go too fast from running off the track and you gain time, you go faster, then yeah, you get these warnings and you get penalties. So that's one thing to be very, very careful of at this circuit, just by the nature of how it works. The track itself is located in Marseille in France, and in fact it's just a 3-hour drive across from Monaco for anyone that's watching from Monaco. So there you go, you can pop to Paul Ricard in no time at all. And really cool track, really fast track, like I say. It's got one of the longest straights of any circuit on the calendar actually. The Mistral straight is 1 mile long just in itself. But the total lap is 5.8 kilometers, and you've got 15 corners. So it's quite fast, but there is a mix of some slower corners in there, mostly medium speed or high speed though. And a really good one for racing. That straight is a good opportunity for slipstreaming and keeping the racing nice and tight and close, which we've seen in the past. Another interesting fact about this circuit is that it's one of the few tracks in the world that can be artificially watered. So it's got sprinklers located around the place, and they can turn that on and actually make it simulate wet conditions anytime they like. So quite an interesting one. Of course we're in a game, so we can make it wet if we want anyway, but it's looking quite dry so far. And let's take a look at a flying lap. So we're running on board then with Chrissy Palmer across the start-finish line at the moment, heading into turn 1, which is a fairly fast chicane, and it's straight away one of the corners where you can exceed track limits if you're not careful. So you'll see on the inside you've got these little yellow marker cones, and if the drivers hit those, that's a good way for the officials in the real world to know that they've gone over the track limits. There's also sensors around, which we'll take a look at in a moment, but nice and clean and tidy so far. This was Chrissy's fastest lap in qualifying on one of our practice races recently. Then into turns 3, 4 and 5, nice little complex twisty section. You can't run too wide out of there, so you need to not go too fast into that chicane so you can get a good run into this hairpin. The most important section of the track now, because it opens up into the longest straight on the whole circuit as we go then onto the Mistral straight through this fast left-hander. Use a bit of runoff, but you don't actually want to use too much because it can zap speed out of the tyres. So the AstroTurf that you see on the outside, that can actually slow the car down if you use too much of it. So use a bit of runoff, but not too much. And of course we have to be all focusing on those track limits at all times. So as you can see, really, really long straight. The car will be maxing out at about 172, 173 miles per hour here. And of course you've got all that downforce on trying to drag it back as well. So real sort of serious speeds into a fast right-hander, down 1 gear into 5th. Again, don't run too wide on the exit. And then we've got a right-hander that just keeps tightening up and tightening up and tightening up, and you kind of got to slow the car down. If you brake too much, then you will lock up because the car is loaded up onto the left-hand side whilst you turn right. Then we go straight into another left-hand corner, and again we can't push too hard in because we immediately need to turn right on the way out. So we've got to make sure that we're focusing on our exit speeds as we come out of these corners. You've got to really focus on slower in, faster out. And then we start to round off the lap. We've got a medium speed left-hander here. Again, it just keeps on going. Use a bit of curb. It kind of drags you around. It hooks into the ridge of the curb a little bit. Then we come out the exit, out the last hairpin, back onto the start-finish straight, and then we finish off our lap of the Paul Ricard circuit. Next up then, using the free camera in the game, I can actually fly around and show you different parts of it, and we can just take a look at some of these corners in a little bit more detail. But you can just see from this nice zoomed out view the level of detail that goes in the game. There's actually driving experience centres, there's an off-road course, there's karting circuits, so you can see kind of some of that dotted around on the screen as I zoomed right out like this. So of course they don't make everything in crystal clear detail once you get further out, but from the driver's perspective there's so much detail in this game, and some of it you wouldn't otherwise see. So you can see some of the extra areas on the track. Just to note as well, all these colourful blue and red lines and sometimes white lines that are around the edge of the track, it looks really nice and pretty, but that's actually designed to be a really abrasive surface that helps slow the cars down if they run off the track. So also serves a functional purpose as well as looking nice. So lots of really high-tech features at this track. It is a really, really cool place, and does play host to some fantastic races, including Formula 1 now as well. So anyway, let's go over the start finish line and take a look at turn 1. So we come up the start finish straight, and it's that chicane that we looked at. You want to be using all the sort of space you have on the outside here. A lot of this track is about 1, getting good exit speed and not compromising your exit speed by trying to attack too hard on the way in, but 2, using all the width available to you, which is why it's so easy to go over track limits, because you have got to run right up to the edges. So there's the little sort of fluorescent yellowy green cone I was talking about. If the drivers hit those, then that means that they get a warning or a penalty if they've done it too many times. You can see it's slightly uphill as you then go through this right. Same thing again, you can't cut too much of the curb as much as you really want to, otherwise you get a penalty, and then it drops away slightly downhill. So one of the reasons it makes it so hard is you really want to cut that curb, but you can't, because where the track drops away, the car then sort of goes a little bit light, and then you have less grip ultimately, where you're just going downhill slightly and you slide out onto these. And these also, if you touch these yellow bumps, then again the game gives you a penalty. And the track even has these little sensors in the ground that if a car hits them, then they get a penalty. So you can see there's a bit of a theme forming here already. But over the course of a longer race, it's so critical that drivers don't pick up penalties and just give away time. You lose 25-30 seconds doing a drive-through penalty easily. Okay, so into turns 2, 3, 4 then, or 3, 4 and 5. You then have the same again, and this curb, you'll notice there's just a little drop from the first part of it to the second part. So you see it's flatter on the inside. So actually what you tend to try and do, you can see some of the lines, the black lines of tyres do this. They cut across onto this flatter surface, and it does hook you in. It's like hooking into a ridge. So the car kind of gets hooked up and dragged round, which is quite a useful thing to use to your advantage. Same goes for turn 2, but you can't go any more than just the beginning of that flat surface where that drain cover is, because again, if you touch that yellow bump, that's a penalty. So you've got to make sure you're working right within these limits. This is where I said you want to make sure you get the car back over to this left-hand side so you can get a good run into the right-hand hairpin. And this then starts to take us all the way up now. We're preparing for that long Mistral straight. Similar again, use the inside of the curb, just enough to drag you around. Don't turn in too early so that you can get a good exit out of this corner. Again, just that little bit of compromise on the way in so you can get the power down sooner on the way out. This is a flat out left hand corner. You want to be as smooth as possible, don't scrub too much speed off the car, and as I was saying, this sort of extra astroturfed area can slow the car down, so you want to make sure you get back onto the tarmac as quickly as possible. Luckily for us, look, we can speed right up. You can see other bits of circuit there. There's actually well over 100 different configurations of this track that they could run, so that's why you see different bits, whether it's a MotoGP race or different types of car racing. They can just adjust the track a little bit to suit. Then we come in then at 170 plus miles per hour at the end of this mile long straight into a fast right-hander, and once again track limits play their part. You can't go too tight to the inside because look, there's one of those sensors and cones again, and you can't go too wide on the exit because once again there are sensors that will give you penalties. So you've got to work in the confines of that. Make sure you keep it nice and smooth. You want to get your braking done in a straight line beforehand. It's not much of a brake, but just enough, and just by dabbing the brake down a gear, it puts a bit more weight on the nose of the car and helps the front wheels grip when you turn in. And that might mean you then have to fight a bit of understeer mid-corner, and you can fix that by just squeezing the power back on gently. Coming then into the next corner, it's that long right-hander that just tightens up, tightens up, tightens up. And it puts a lot of load on the front left, and this is where, you know, having a setup that helps you is really important. And also, you know, your pressures have to be right. You could very easily start cooking tyres because they're getting put under such load. You've got that fast right-hander, then this long right-hander here. So it's really key that you get the pressures right on circuits like this, particularly if it's hot. So once again, coming back in, you can see where the black marks on the circuit kind of cut across these curbs. So you're trying to get a nice clean exit here. You don't actually need to run all the way out to the outside here because your main objective is to get the car back over to the right hand side, ready for this next left hand corner. Very easy again to try and turn in too early. You'll notice we're kind of out here quite late and you think, well, okay, the corner's over there, why are we out here? But it's because we want to get a late apex, cut back, and then that way you can see already now, if I was a car right now where I'm positioned, I've got a much straighter exit. Whereas if I tried to turn in early, naturally, as I go underground, naturally we'd end up a bit more sort of out here trying to cut back, and then suddenly we're here and we need to get all the way back over here to get a straight run here. So late apex is key. So we're starting to round the lap off now. Long, fast right-hander, that's a flat-out corner. This is a very fast corner as well, and it's another one that you can attack too hard and then sacrifice exit if you're not careful, but not as critical as some of the other circuits corners on this lap. Then we go through our fast left, and we need to get the car stopped for the hairpin. So we're more worried once again about not being over here, because we want to get the car ready over to the left. So we have to sacrifice a bit of speed on the left-hander to get over to the left-hand side of the track on the exit. That's far better, because we then get a much neater line through this hairpin. Once again, one of these little cones that we can't hit, but we get a much straighter exit, and the straight exit means we can get the power down sooner, and if we can get the power down sooner, of course we will carry more speed the whole way up this straight. So that little bit of sacrifice on the way in just really helps you benefit the entire way of the straight on the way out. So there you have it, we've completed our lap. You can see it's a fantastic looking circuit, really pretty, and that will be the driver's challenge for our next race at Paul Ricard.